How is
Awesome.
everything going?
Going great. We've covered so much today, and I think this is a perfect way to round it all out. We talked about channel marketing. We talked about churn reduction techniques, and now we're going to talk about the tool that can maybe bridge all these things together and the strategy to bridge them together so that we can talk across channel to our customer in the way they want to talk to us from. So this is the perfect way, I think, to close us out for the day. And thank you all that have stayed here for this closing keynote. Greg, I'll let you take it away and tell us all about omnichannel marketing and the missed opportunity that brands are having right now with omnichannel marketing.
Excellent. Thank you, Derek, Kurt, Phil. Nice to see you guys again. Great job as usual. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have enjoyed the session up until this point. And as Derek mentioned, I am here to talk to you about omnichannel marketing, which sounds scary, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm going to show you why exactly it's not scary. Just very quickly, boilerplate for you. If you're unfamiliar with who OmniSend is, we are an omnichannel marketing automation platform offering up to 6 different channels of marketing, a couple of which I'm going to talk about today. So we'll get there. Contact information is on the last page for myself and the company. So feel free to reach out to us with any and all questions you may have. All right, so let's jump in this. So goal today is really to talk about how to enhance your email program, because at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about. So why it's so important, why we should look beyond single channel marketing. And that doesn't mean you need to do every channel in the entire world, but we're going to talk about ways to kind of layer and complement one another. And then I'm going to give you some direct examples as we walk through the presentation. Clear caveat here, everyone's business is going to be a little bit different. There's going to be nuances and target demos and things like that you are applying for. So I'm going to try to make the examples somewhat broad yet specific, but I want you to think about as you're going through how we can take the small things and apply them to your individual business, because I think that's how you're going to get the most out of it here. And we're going to do this by starting kind of from a very high level and think about the customer journey and that traditional model of like, you get the box over here and we got to get them over here. And it's this straight line going across and then we circle them back through. And that model is kind of broken. It's outdated. It doesn't really fit anymore. And I think this is a really good picture of a modern day customer journey where everything's connected. People can navigate it. They get through, but it's not always uniform, right? So they might go from A to B to C all the way to F and then circle back to D. But at some point, they're going to get there. So we need to think about with all our programs, whether it's email or paid search or all these different programs we might be doing, how this spider web connects one thing to the next. And this is sticking with those old models of the customer journey is when you get to this batch and blast world. And frankly, we live in a batch and blast world. We know it doesn't mean we're ever really going to get out of it, but we're certainly going to get better at it. And I think what happens is for a lot of different reasons, retailers, subscription-based, non-subscription-based, we send a lot of batch and blast messaging out. And consumers are just trained to kind of turn that off right now. They expect some sort of segmentation. So we need to find a way to do that in a realistic and compelling and scalable way, realizing that we probably don't all have 20 people dedicated to data science and email marketing for us. So we've got this promotional messaging, and then the retailers are struggling with actually delivering the messaging. And it might be you or one other person on your team who's in charge of email programs, and you only have so much time in a day, and they might be doing paid search and social at the same time. And that's what the presentation today is, to show you direct examples of things you can do, realizing and assuming you don't have a huge team. But when you disconnect today, you can start implementing things right away and hopefully impact your bottom line. And this is really where omnichannel comes in. And again, the channels are going to be different for every single person, every single company, but we talk about using different channels to personalize, to complement, and to deliver more segmented messages. And this is why it's important. I'm not going to go through all these stats for you, but it's powerful because it's a way to deliver personal engagement, and consumers expect that, and they certainly respond well to it. So see 90% higher customer retention rates over a single channel when we add multiple ones, and higher purchase rates. For a subscription-based business, cost of customer acquisition, usually very high. How do we get them in there? And then how to retain them? And I want to talk about customer retention, but from the beginning, we always talk about customer retention after they actually make the sale, and how do we keep them here? How do we upsell them? How do we keep them, that lifetime value moving? I think we talk about customer retention. One of the things we should always look at is how that retention starts from the very first interaction. And this is where step one for different channels to add, look for SMS as to be a really good complementary tool now. And, some of the things we look at from the SMS standpoint is 5 years ago, it might've been really expensive to do. Even 3 years ago, it might've been really expensive. That cost is no longer a barrier to adoption. And I'm going to talk about this in just a minute, but consumers are increasingly using SMS. But it's not just a standalone channel. It can be, but it can also be a really good complementary tool to your other channels, to your promotional, even if they're batch and blast messages, really good complementary tool to those as well. So here's an easy way to do it. When you talk about your email sign up and you're collecting this information, whether you currently have an SMS program or not, I would encourage you to start collecting those SMS numbers. Sure, not everyone's going to give them to you. That's fine. The people that give them to you are saying, yes, this is a channel I want to communicate in. We obviously have high open rates, high read rates, things like that with SMS. But, we look at generational cohorts, millennials, Gen Z. Gen Z is 25% of the US and global population now. This is our youngest generation. Text messaging is natural for them. They grew up with it. It's a natural communication tool, such as social media. But they also are planning on using email just the same or increasingly much so over the next 3 to 4 or 5 years. So if we know their email usage is going to increase, that's great because email is a revenue power driver, but also their SMS is going to increase and they're adopting these things. But it's not only Gen Z. So if we think about this in a bigger picture, how are demographics turning? How are people choosing to interact with brands? And SMS is one of those ways. So when we talk about ways to layer that on, just from a promotional standpoint, think about any email you might send on a Tuesday or Thursday. We send the email, maybe we send a re-mail 2 days later to the non-openers, good best practice, change that subject line. But if we know that the offer is going to be expiring very shortly, maybe a couple hours, sending an email doesn't really make sense in a whole lot of cases there because people are not always in front of their email inbox. SMS, 90% of all SMS messages are read within the first 3 minutes. So if you think about this, flash sales, offers going to expire, you want to give a little extra boost to the campaign, or the campaign's doing great for you, you want to kind of get it going a little bit more, you can always send that SMS off to customers to let them know that, hey, your offer is going to expire or whatever it might be. We have this upsell opportunity. So think about all the different ways, just from a batch and blast promotional standpoint or new product announcement, whatever it could be, that we can send off to people here. But this is going to bring me to number 2, which is much more personalized. This is where your customer retention, customer onboarding, customer engagement really comes in. This is your welcome message and welcome series. And we want to try to personalize this as much as possible. I'm assuming, being a subscription-based business, everyone has a welcome message already sending. Chances are most of you, if not all of you, have welcome series messages sending. If you don't, highly encourage you to do so. Happy to talk to you about it as well. But we look at these messages where the reason everyone has them is because, one, they're high engagement messages, anywhere from 50 to 80% open rates. And the series is really guiding someone to a point of purchase here. It tells the brand story, it tells all these things. But the problem with a lot of retailers is that best practices have been adopted by retailers. And you might say, well, why is that a bad thing? Well, if everyone does the same best practices and everyone implements everything and has the same connect with us on social messages, there's no differentiation. It's uniformity. It's the same as batch and blast messages, just with higher read rates. So the goal is to take some very simplistic pieces of data that we can capture at point of sign up to then slightly tweak our welcome series and our message to deliver a more robust, a more personalized, a more segmented welcome series. And here's an example from MeUndies. So most of you are probably familiar with them. They sell standalone products, but they also have undergarment subscriptions. Really, they have 2 primary categories that you might want to focus on here, men and women's. If you are maybe a food, grocery subscription business, or maybe a pet subscription business, a wine business, think about gender might not matter to you. It might, but it also might be something like cats and dogs or snakes or red wine versus white wine or drinks and fruit versus meats, whatever it could be. And simply just asking what they're interested in at point of sign up can go a long way to segmenting your welcome series. And here's an example of a simple way to do it. Male, female, right? We just ask for one piece of data. that people will generally give you because it's not asking for social security numbers or, things like that. So one piece of data, and we can send a more segmented message, segmented welcome series, and all the way through. So think about is if gender is not the right one, which one is actually a necessity for you that could help you market better. And I'll give you an example of what this could look like. So say we have one consumer who is a female, she's on your website, checking out jumpsuits, whatever it might be. We have another one who's male, looking at t-shirts. It could be red wine, white wine, doesn't matter. Now you can have a pop-up that simply asks them if they are gender specific. The other way to collect this, if you don't want to ask people specifically what they're interested in, because there's a chance that maybe they are interested in multiple things, is that you embed something and put a tag into your pop-up on different categories or products of your pages. So categories make sense, right? We have one pop-up that is only deployed on the female or the women's category of your website. We have another which is only deployed on the male category. Simple way, clean cut, looks the same, but when a user submits that, there's a tag that automatically appends to, in this case would be Omnichannel, but your email provider that says, they submitted the female version of the pop-up. Now you have that information, either the category of products they're viewing, it could be female jumpsuits, whatever it might be. But we have this information, we can then use that tag to say, okay, let me deliver you a more robust welcome message or a more strategic welcome message. So in this case, we have female jumpsuits, male t-shirts. So this is a welcome message I got from the brand that says, hey, thanks for signing up. We have our jeans here. Now, what I could do with that is if I just captured that single piece of data, so jumpsuits category, I know that's when they were viewing products, decided to sign up. I could then send them messages like this. So a female jumpsuit, male t-shirts. There's not a whole lot difference in the message, but it's more relevant to me and what I was just doing here. So it doesn't have to be this high level. You can get as ingrained as you want. If it's a B2B versus B2C company, or you have a cat hero image versus a dog hero image, think about how it resonates with a customer and things your competitors are not necessarily doing for you. And then you can expand it on further. You can use this as the linchpin or the tentpole for your welcome series itself. So for that male who might sign up on the jeans, or I know that jeans are a good complement to t-shirts, I send them this welcome series message as message 2. Much more sales oriented than you might see in a normal welcome series, which is all the About Us brand. Here's what I would caution you with. If they're on your website, they signed up, they viewed your products or your subscription packages, whatever it might be, they've already qualified you to some degree. They might need a little push over the edge. Maybe they were torn between a 3-month subscription and a 1-year subscription, right? But if you know that they signed up for your emails of viewing the 1-month subscription, or I'm sorry, the 1-year subscription, you're a little more leading. Now this message here, it uses user-generated content, social proof with testimonials and reviews and ratings, all things you already have. This message was crafted out of content that the brand already sent me. So think about that for you. You probably have messaging like this and content already created that you send out to customers. And then for those female specific people, or the audience, we can send something a little more driven toward female. So, hey, swimsuits, cover-ups, accessories, whatever it might be. So again, think about these pieces of content that already exist either on your website or you've already sent via email or other channels. Repurpose it and drive consumers down this particular funnel to deliver a much more robust subscription welcome series. And again, think about the terms of subscription or cost savings or whatever it might be and really hone in on those things. And then we talk about layering, right? We want to layer the welcome series. So how do we do this? Well, if you think about this, now we have SMS and we just apply it. So if you've signed up with SMS, we know that, hey, if we go 2 days between messages or 1 day between messages, we can also offer an SMS in that break period to kind of get you re-engaged. Or if your intro offer or customer acquisition offer is going to expire, we know it's going to be quickly read and we can layer SMS onto those individual things. So it's all about really, in this case, one piece of data that you can either ask or just hide from your consumers. Doesn't take any effort. Brings it in, you can automate these workflows and build the messages based on content that at least 90% you probably already have. But all we know is it's more competitive than your competition out there, more segmented, and it's more relevant to the individuals at that point. So that's two. Let's talk about abandoners, because ideally we want to get them in. We want to get them signed up. We all know they're going to go to our website. They're going to leave without buying. They're going to put things in carts without buying because they want to probably see if you have an incentive or something in there. But we can certainly target these people as well and do it in an automated and logical and segmented way. So I'm not going to go through this whole chart here, but look right in the dead middle there. What I looked at on the website in 2016, 4 years ago, seems like an eternity. Consumers, 60% plus. We're expecting retailers to use what I've looked at on the website to make emails more relevant. There is no way this number has come down the last 4 years. If anything, this thing is shot to like 80%. So if we think about that 4 years ago and where we're at now, we certainly need to do this. Now, the good thing for retailers is that the technology to implement these abandonment messages has come tenfold since that time. It's much easier to implement these strategies here. But again, think about those email subscribers who just don't cart products, but we know they have some sort of interest. This is the goal, to try to retarget those people. And I can and have spoken for 45 minutes on strategies for browse and product abandonment. But think about how we can be targeted. Hey, we noticed you checking out the 3-month subscription. Wasn't sure. Here's how to balance some things. Or you could just make it a little more generic. Not mention the fact they were checking something specific out, make it look like an email you might send on a Tuesday or Wednesday, but all from the context standpoint, all they know is it's relevant for them. So it's the right message to the right customer at the right time, and it's just automating and churning in the background as well. Cart recovery, exact same thing. We're probably all familiar with cart recovery by now. I'm not going to go into it a whole lot, but if you think about, hey, we have one message, can we expand to 2 and 3? Can we expand to 4 and 5? You might laugh and say 4 messages. I've had clients do this in the past. They've actually performed better than earlier messages. There might just be a longer consideration window for your particular brand or a particular industry. So think about how maybe a 4th subtle message can come in. And then again, we want to layer other channels onto each of these as well. So if we go, hey, they abandoned the cart, we send a reminder. Maybe we don't want a 3rd or 4th message going, or maybe we just want 2, but we want a pretty big break in there, but they have either push notifications or Facebook Messenger or SMS signed up for. We can then send a message off to them via SMS and say, hey, we got you covered. Be sure to come back. And again, think about that offer that might expire, especially, or if you're going to expire someone's shopping cart and empty it out. It's a good sense of urgency to give that final push to entice them to come back. So a lot of different things you can do from an automated standpoint with singular pieces of data that are not going to cost an arm and a leg, but it's easy to execute even with a small team. And then finally, as a bonus, I was going in with 3 and I said, you know what, we want to talk about customer retention. And for subscription-based businesses, I think this matters probably even more so than a general retailer. But think about that post-purchase experience. And I always say the experience with your brand starts after the purchase is made. And this is where we want to nurture the customer. And obviously customer churn with subscription businesses is quite high as well. So, think about some of those basic messages. If you don't currently have them, like a thank you message. Now, I'm not talking about an order confirmation, but just a message that says, hey, thanks for a recent order. Let us know if we could do anything for you. Probably extremely important for those first-time customers who are signing up for your subscription. How do we make it better for you? If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Here's how to contact us. Here's some tips and tricks. Check out our blog for how-tos, whatever it might be. But just subtle thank you messages like this have converted extremely well, normally very high open rates. But think about what matters to your customer at that point, how to help them make more of their purchase. And you're going to excel beyond from a customer retention standpoint. And again, let's think about how we make that experience better. SMS, we can layer it on here. So, they make the purchase, we send an SMS off to them. Hey, we did it. Thanks for your purchase. Again, same concept, but automate these out. So wouldn't it be great to get an SMS, say, hey, your next product shipped, so they're aware of it, especially if they maybe bought a subscription as a gift. So coffee subscription or flower subscription as a gift for Mother's Day coming up, Christmas, whatever it might be. It'd be great to know that, hey, their flower is going to be showing up in a couple of days because they shipped today, right? So this is all about continuing that communication, whether it's for them or for a gift, but it keeps that transparency open and says, hey, this brand's really got my back. They know what I'm doing here, but it's all simple pieces of information. Again, SMS increasingly being used, but there's a lot of different ways to, of course, you could use it as a standalone channel, but to really augment the customer experience and make it better and something that your customers or your competitors are maybe not doing at that point. So a lot of different ways. I hope I gave enough examples with visuals to say, okay, that applies to my brand. That makes a lot of sense. How do I make this happen here? And again, all these things can be easily done with 1 or 2 people on your marketing team. You don't need that team of data scientists here. So from a takeaway standpoint, remind you, think beyond single channels. And that does not mean you need to use 6 channels or 4 channels or even 3 channels. Think about just moving to 1 channel, and whatever channel that makes most sense for you and your target demo is the right channel to do. But think about how they're going to complement one each other versus just being siloed. Of course, SMS can help because it's increasingly being used and the cost is increasingly come down. So if you're looking at it, I encourage you to start collecting the SMS numbers, even if you're not planning on doing a program right away, or you just want to get ahead of yourself. But also think about if it's something you want to try out and continue doing. When you talk about cost, project yourself out. Hey, if we have X number and make up a really large number, how does that cost scale for us? Because you want to know how that scales. You're probably dealing with subscription-based products. You're probably dealing with fatigue. So you're in a good place and a bad place right now. All right, good place. People are really recognizing the value and the convenience of subscription products, but everyone has a subscription product now. So you're probably dealing with a little bit of fatigue. So how do we cut through the clutter? How do we make that go away? Relevance. It's the best way to do so. So wherever you can make your messaging more relevant, the best way to do it is to execute it. And then I always say, focus on the customer journey. Customers want a better customer journey. Retailers absolutely have the power to deliver it. It's really up to you to try to deliver it. But again, you don't have to do everything at once. Pick one thing, execute it, implement it, move to the next one. Small steps are better than 10% of 9 things done. And of course, if you want some data, stats, things like this, check out omnisend.com. We have an SMS marketing guide there, just in case you want to check out some data, days and times, and different stats behind there to get a little more informed on SMS if you're unfamiliar with it. So contact info right here for you. Feel free to reach out to me directly, reach out to the company, whatever you want to do. I so appreciate your time today. Hopefully we got something out of it for you. But if I can follow up with anything, do not hesitate to reach out. We are here for you. I am here for you. And thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Back to you, Derek.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, so much. I love it. And I really, I do recommend this SMS as a channel. I consider it a mandatory channel. So if you aren't doing it today, check out the guide. Make sure that you implement it appropriately. Obviously, any new channel is going to take a little bit of time to commit to, but the ROI is just proven to be there. I mean, who doesn't touch their phone 40 times a day? Mine's, within arm's reach at pretty much any given moment. And I think we're really just scratching the surface on how to use that channel for true interaction and interactivity. And I'll be doing a future of SMS for e-commerce podcast in the near future, talking about how I predict it's going to evolve. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think the one thing, I think it's going to evolve more so today. I mean, you could just look back, 3 years ago to SMS. There were some retailers using it. I think a couple of years ago, retailers were still figuring out what to do with it and how to do it. I think I mentioned cost a couple of times, that it was a lot more expensive a couple of years ago to do it. That has really come down. So now you have a little more trial and error but so many people, like I'm signed up for tons of SMS messages. I can look at brands and say, okay, you're doing this pretty well. You're not doing that well, but the cost isn't there to say, if I'm not doing it that well, I have time to figure this out. So to me, it's fascinating. I see more and more people getting, just in conversations with family, friends, conferences, more and more people are signing up for them because they're recognizing some value there. And I've converted off text maybe 3 times in the last month and a half myself. And From an email guy where I'm always checking emails, I'm like, I'm sitting on my couch, I got something, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. And I click over and boom, I'm done. So I think it's certainly emerging, but all those barriers have really broken down, which is a good thing for retailers.
Yeah, I think, and I do think if you're an e-commerce store owner or maybe a VP of marketing and you're thinking like, I never convert from text. Well, there's 2 things going on there. The first is you're not everybody in the world. So there are people that will definitely prefer this channel. And we have to admit that to ourselves, that there is a subset of our audience. 100% of our audience isn't going to convert from text, but if 10% will, that's still a huge enough opportunity to consider the incremental channel, adding the channel. And then on the flip side, the reason you might not be converting from text is because you aren't opting into text campaigns, because you don't see any ones that are good enough to, warrant your attention there. And so that's like the catch-22. You have to do it in order, in order to convert from that channel. So.
Yeah, and it's definitely a way, if nothing else, it's like a TV commercial, right? So an email is very much like this, where you don't always convert off the email, but you see the email, it gets in your mind, and then you go organically searching for something to make the purchase. It's just one of those touch points. It's just a touch point, right? If nothing else, and if they don't want to be on your program, it's easy enough to opt out of it as well. So, but just by opting into the program, it's an easy way to say, okay, they are choosing to want to be contacted this way. And that's the one thing where I mentioned, even if you are not planning on implementing it from the short term, if you start collecting it, you'll get a pretty good sense of whether your subscribers want to hear from you. If you're getting no signups for it, maybe it's just on your demo, but at least and it doesn't cost it doesn't cost you anything to collect it, right? It costs you, the cost comes in implementing it and using it. So collect it now and let your audience tell you whether they want to hear from you via that channel.
I love it. And I bet 95% of people are going to find there's enough portion from a portion of the audience standpoint that it'll become valuable. It's going to be tough. There's only maybe a handful of businesses, that are either really pass through. So like single time purchase, which isn't the subscription event. Probably you're not here.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. Or the ones that are really slim margins, or the ones that are just really old demographics. Those will be the only times it's going to be harder to implement, but still can be very successful.
I would agree.
Yeah. Awesome. Greg, thank you so much for joining us for our closing keynote. I